Hello and welcome to the Imaging Wire Show. My name is Brian Casey. I'm managing editor of the Imaging Wire. Really excited to bring this episode to you today. Our topic is subspecialized radiology and the workforce shortage. And our guest is Daniel Arnold, CEO and co-founder of practice development platform company Medality. Daniel, thanks for being back with us today.
Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Medality?
Absolutely. I'm the CEO of Medality, formerly MRI Online. Started my career in business and technology and have teamed up with now over 300 world-class radiologists to bring the Medality platform to life. We have over 100 specialty radiology courses designed to teach everything from a first-year resident to the most advanced imaging courses and things like cardiac CT, prostate MR, and more. It's exciting to be back on the show. I think when we were chatting earlier this year, we had a few dozen clients. We're now happy to share we just passed our 100th enterprise client. So we are being adopted by everyone from private radiology practices to large academic institutions to support their in-house development needs as they look to meet today's growing demands in imaging with a workforce that is not suited to meet that. And so happy to talk today a little bit about how our products play a role.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, it's glad to see the growth. So radiology, there's always been this kind of tug of war in radiology between generalist and subspecialist. And as healthcare gets more complex and imaging gets more complex, it kind of seems like the subspecialists are sort of winning out, but there's some issues with that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, I think it helps to start with, how did we get so subspecialized? What is subspecialty? What does it mean to be subspecialized? A lot of the people who teach courses on Medality, when they specialized, they just specialized in MR. They specialized in CT. They specialized at the modality level. And then at some point that changed as more and more imaging use cases developed, and you could find more and more different types of pathologies and diseases and go deeper and deeper in each area. Then we further specialize beyond that. So partly the growth in imaging has created the need for subspecialization. I think there's also interesting market dynamics that have led to this need. As I understand, it's hard for a lot of present day new into radiology people to understand that it wasn't that long ago that the radiology market was really bad. 10, 15 years ago, it was really hard to find a job. And so when you couldn't find a job, what would you do? Well, I got to make myself a little more marketable. Maybe I'll go develop a new skill. And so I can't find a job as a general radiologist. So I'll stick around at my home institution, maybe pick up a fellowship, maybe pick up two. If I do, maybe then, a slot will open up for me in the city I want to move to or at the institution I'm at. And so a lot of people had to subspecialize to buy themselves time and make themselves more marketable. And I wonder too if that had some sort of self-reinforcement mechanism where as more people did the subspecialization, now more of our referring clinician base have become accustomed to, well, I'm only going to have my neuroradiology read by a neurotrained imager and vice versa. So there's got to be something that happened there. I think there's maybe a third thing that happened, which is consolidation. So as groups have consolidated, you've got Radiology Associates of North Texas with 300 radiologists. They're able to provide very, very high levels of subspecialization across their practice. You can employ 50 neuroradiologists and 50 MSK radiologists and what have you. And so as the groups have consolidated, their ability to provide some specialty services, I think, has changed quite a bit. But, we have lots and lots of clients who are in the, call it, 15 to 25 person radiology practice where, there might be all the radiologists might have fellowships, but boy, they're providing general radiology services every day. And all of them are reading across a wide number of services. So the subspecialization has happened. And those are some of the reasons why it may have happened. I think there's some questions around what level of subspecialization is needed and where and why and in what cases. But the data's still been pretty strong that 98% of people in the US at least do a fellowship. I think the question is that going to change? And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go.
Yeah. So what are the areas where you see radiologists most attracted to when it comes to subspecialization?
So, it depends what practice setting you want to go into. MSK and neuro, I think, have always been the most popular areas for people to do fellowship in. They're two of the most common areas. So if you want to, have a job in a private practice setting, you're going to have a very undesired specialty. We hear all the time that there's massive shortages in areas like breast imaging. So if you're coming out with a breast imaging fellowship right now, you can pick your location and pick your price and find a pretty great job for you. I think the other thing you find with people that do breast imaging is, they might only want to do breast imaging, whereas if you're doing MSK, you might pick up some other areas of interest. We're hearing more and more the need for pediatrics, which is really interesting. I think it's a really tricky thing, though. So coming back to which level of subspecialization is right. Well, if you're a pediatric radiologist and you're really, really into seeing pediatric imaging, then you probably want to work at a children's hospital. There's only a handful of children's hospitals in the country that can give you the type of volume to be a pediatric imager. So if you're a 20-person radiology group, but you're reading a little bit of pediatrics, do you really want a pediatric trained radiologist, or do you want someone in the group that's comfortable reading pediatrics, but what do the referring physicians want? And so again, it comes back to, thinking through what kind of job you want, what kind of things you want to read, and then letting that kind of drive the fellowship orientation.
And the typical route to subspecialization is usually like 1 or 2 fellowships, correct?
Yeah. So in the US, there's, the academic institutions all offer great fellowships. The most common is 1 year. Neuro has been pretty strong in providing a 2-year fellowship. But the typical path is that if you're going to go into neuro in academics, then maybe you'll take on 2 years. Otherwise, if you're going to go into private practice, then 1 year is likely sufficient. And all the other fellowships are 1 year. But there's a few interesting things going on here, Brian. One, a good friend of mine was in the middle of his 2-year neuro fellowship training at a big academic institution, one of the best neuro fellowships in the country. And they asked him to become an attending after 18 months because they just needed him to start helping out with the work list. And so the demands are pushing hard on this. The other thing I'll add is the mini fellowships are providing a new pathway for folks to consider. So most residency programs—
Can you describe how those work?
Yeah. So most residency programs in the country now on the 4th year will allow a resident to do an elective. And so, okay, through your first 3 years, then you pass the core exam. Okay, great. What is it that you're interested in? Well, I'm interested in MSK and neuro. Great. Do a 6-month mini fellowship in MSK and a 6-month mini fellowship in neuro. You already met all the other core gen rad needs that you have. And so then you're coming out into fellowship. You've already done 6 months of focused study. And so I think then a lot of groups are asking, well, do you need another year of focused study when you've already done a 6-month mini fellowship? So I've got a good friend who just in a different specialty in body imaging, they called the 6-month body imaging fellowship good enough, and they brought him in to be a body attending without having to finish his full fellowship. So I think a lot of groups, a lot of academic institutions through these mini fellowships are giving new specialization pathways for folks to consider. Now, there's the big question of accreditation and what will the societies recognize. And so all of this is going to be developing over time as folks try and figure out what does it mean to credibly say you're fellowship trained. I think within the United States context, though, still people are, when they say that, meaning that you finished a full year at an institution that can teach.
So that's the backdrop to subspecialization in radiology. Has there been a disconnect between how radiologists are training and how they're expected to work in private practice? Have our educational methods kept up with these workforce changes?
They haven't. And I'll give a few examples of this. One, I did a webinar with Dan Corbett, who represents private practices. Do you know Dan well? He's been hiring radiologists for a long time, and his group just helps place private practice radiologists. And he said they won't talk to a radiologist that doesn't want to, that says they demand specialization of over 50%. Meaning, I'm an MSK rad, I want to read MSK. They go, great, you can read MSK 50% of the time, but I need you to read other stuff the other half. And so the groups are coming out, the fellows are coming out saying, hey, I just did this fellowship in MSK, I want to be an MSK rad. You go, well, you can't work at my practice unless you're willing to read 50% something else. So that's one data point. Data point number 2 two is we run a survey every year of thousands of radiologists on our platform asking how many specialties they read on average. And they read 4 or more on average. Okay, data point number 3, the Academic University of Radiology, the University Academic Radiology Group. They're the Association of Residency Program Directors, Program Chairs. They do their annual conference. They've been looking into this very question, saying, are we over subspecializing? They're concerned that they are over subspecializing because, if you're going to read neuro in an academic medical center where you're going to be maybe the only academic medical center for 5 or 6 states, you're getting really, really challenging cases. You're getting all of the cancer workups and things that they can't solve in the university context or in the community context come to you. Okay, then, you need to be really subspecialty trained. But if you're a general radiologist out in the community, chances are you're doing mostly gen rad and degenerative spine. And so you actually, then what happens is you do your neuro fellowship and you kind of feel like, well, I'm a little over prepared for the neuro that I'm reading in my private group, but I'm underprepared to help the group out in all the other areas that I see in my community to serve this hospital well. And so I think the university radiologists are concerned. The ACR is also concerned. So the ACR recently put together a task force to try and understand, this is more on the DRIR side, but where today, another thing that's changed on the increased specialization path is you have to declare whether you want to go into interventional radiology or diagnostic radiology. As a result, the diagnostic radiologists are getting a lot less IR practice because all the IR is going to the IR specialized rad. So guess what happens when you're a DR out in the community? The hospital needs someone who could do some light IR services, and you haven't done a drainage or a biopsy, or maybe you've done 5 in your whole residency, and so they're not seeing enough volume to prepare. And so then these same groups that are hiring saying, hey, we'd love to bring you into this community, be a partner in this practice, but can you do some procedures? People are saying, well, I've got a year-long breast fellowship, but no, I get to gen rad, procedures. And so I think there's a little bit of a workforce mismatch that's happening here where you're going into fellowship, you're going, all right, well, I just spent a year doing MSK under, I'll name Don Resnick because we're friends, but you could fill in any great MSK rad. I just did this fellowship, and now I want to read pure MSK MR. Well, there's only a handful of groups in the country where you can just read MSK MR all day. And if you want to go be a partner in a private practice, and then you need a broad range of skills. So that's what we're seeing.
So basically, then the situation here is that people are going in and they're getting these really finely tuned subspecialized skills, and then they're getting out in the workforce, and they're finding out that the need is actually for a much broader skill set, than what they were trained for. If you're a radiologist in that position, a new radiologist in that position, like, what are your alternatives here?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Ben White put out to his Twitter audience a few months ago. He asked, are you willing to hire general radiologists without fellowship training? What % of groups are willing? And what do you think the answer was, Brian? What do you think people said on
what
average?
Percentage? What
percentage from 0 to 1 were willing to hire non-fellowship trained?
30%?
It was 50%.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that's an informal Twitter poll. Okay,
yeah.
So then I was at a conference of private practice rads a month ago, all private practice leaders, about 40 groups represented. And more than half of the hands were raised when I asked that same question. And I don't think the answer to that question was yes 2-3 years ago. So because of the workforce shortage, the groups are saying, well, we don't care at this point. We just need a radiologist who can come in. So that's the radiology practice perspective, which is we're short bodies, we'll hire you, and we'll provide on-the-job training. And that's where Medality comes in, and we can talk about that in a second.
Sure. So you in fact, go ahead.
Yeah, but then you got to take the resident side of this. So I think there's this chicken egg thing, right? Which is the residents who've been being raised in this academic environment for some time. They've been straight A students to get into med school, to get into residency, and now their whole life they've been told they have to do a fellowship, are going, am I really gonna go off the track? I mean, that's a pretty, again, 98% of people do subspecialty training. So to be the 2% to do something else when you've been going on the path for sometimes a little bit of a scary proposition. So, how are today's residents thinking about it? How should they think about it? There's a few ways to think about it. On the one hand, man, getting a fellowship might set you up for life. And, the market's really good right now, but in the future, maybe the market's not so good. So what do you do? Do you want to give that level of extra insurance just in case the market turns? Well, you could make the flip case, which is actually the market's really good right now. There's no guarantee the market's going to be good next year. Certainly, pundits are saying there's going to be a workforce shortage for the next 20 years. But okay, you and I have been around long enough to know that these things go up, these things go down. If someone's offering you a really good job now at the practice you want to work at, in the location you want to work at, and you don't have to get a fellowship, and they're offering you on-the-job training, do you take the bird in hand, or do you, and by the way, a year's worth of compensation, which is, you're facing down student loans, maybe trying to start a family, everything else, it's a serious choice. And so I think a lot more residents are really considering it. And this is a data point from just this morning. Was talking to a friend at a private practice who said they have 5 candidates in the pipeline that are all gen rads who've reached out saying, I want to skip fellowship and I want to start work. And they didn't have that the year before or the year before that. So something's changing right now.
Interesting. Now, Medality, you guys specialize, so to speak, in kind of bridging this disconnect, right? This training issue between people coming into the workforce that might not have exactly the skills that the private practices want. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I guess you've got some new things coming up that you want to chat about too.
Yeah. So we've developed something called a fellowship certificate program. In a second, we'll show you a little demo. But a fellowship certificate program is designed for busy radiologists who want to quickly learn a new subspecialty. And it combines high yield practice cases with expert-led instruction to help you become faster, more confident reader in a specific area. Now, the original use case for this was for in-practice rads. So, I want to learn prostate MRI. Prostate MRI didn't exist 15 years ago when I was in training. I'm now here in practice. I need to learn prostate MRI. And so that was sort of the initial use case. And we've, since trained hundreds of fellows from all over the world in this manner. In addition to doing videos, you get to review cases, create reports, get feedback on those reports, get grades, and give you the confidence that you need to say, hey, Dr. Casey, you're doing a great job. You're ready to report on this, or you're not, and here's some extra learning you need to do. But a way for you to implement new training techniques into your practice as the world advances. So in the areas like prostate, cardiac CT, stroke imaging, all these areas have changed so much. And so how do you stay up to date across them? So that was the original use case. But what's happened, Brian, is all these trends that we're talking about now, you've got people wanting to come in with a gen rad and they go, well, I'm a gen rad. I did my mini fellowship in neuro, but it'd be really helpful to the practice if I could read MSK. Well, great. And so what the practices are doing is they'll say, okay, great. Do 4 days a week of gen rad. We'll pay an attending salary. We'll give you 1 day a week to do learning, sponsored by Medality. And so you'll be a hybrid attending fellow. You do 1 day of work of fellowship training, and 1 day a week, we have these learning pathways that you can go through. By the end of the training, you could have done an additional, 50 days of full days of training, reviewed hundreds of proctored cases, catered feedback on all these reports that you get to a point where you go, hey, in addition to practicing gen rad, I'm comfortable doing, knees and shoulders within my practice. And so you can grow your area of expertise on the job. And it's great for the practice too, because instead of learning what you think a practice wants you to learn, you can actually learn what the practice needs you to learn based on the current volumes. And so for one volume, it might be that they're short MSK readers. For another practice, it might be that they're short advanced body readers. And yet for yet another, they might need, in the pediatrics example, like we talked about, maybe they want a new contract and they need some pediatric coverage, but they don't need a full-time pediatric person. Well, you can learn that on the job through Medality.
Great. So you got something to show us right now. So let's take a look at that and let's cue that up.
Our fellowship certificate programs are case-based training programs designed for busy radiologists who want to quickly learn a subspecialty. They combine high-yield practice cases and expert-led instruction to help radiologists become faster, more confident, and more efficient readers. To begin, the radiologist starts a pre-assessment where they are asked to review a case and select a diagnosis from a set of multiple choice options. The learner will immediately be told if they answered the question correctly or incorrectly, from which they can review the case discussion along with the gold standard report. As learners progress through the program, they will be able to see the total number of questions that they have answered, their accuracy, and their response time. As they complete each question in the assessment, this mastery score will update with their rolling stats and averages for that specific assessment. Once a radiologist completes the pre-assessment and the provided Mastery Series video courses, the learner can complete the post-assessment to test how their speed and accuracy have improved. After completing the pre-assessment, the practice cases, and the post-assessment, the radiologist will be able to claim their fellowship certificate, which they can share with their employers, with hospitals to receive privileges, and within their professional network.
Wow, fellowship certificate programs. That sounds really, really interesting, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for letting us give you a short demo on that. It represents the culmination of years of research and development into, how to craft these online interactive learning experiences paired with some of the greatest radiology instructors in the globe. And so we're excited to bring that to you guys today.
So Daniel, you've talked in the past about how training and upskilling can help practices actually increase their capacity and deal with growth in imaging volume without having to actually hire new bodies. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a really data-driven organization, and we work really closely with our clients to show how the courses that people do lead to productivity on the actual clinical side. One of our studies showed that people that do our advanced fellowship certificate programs that we just looked at actually go on to read an additional 20 advanced imaging studies per week in that area. And so if you're doing our neuro fellowship, within a few months, you're going to be reading an additional 20 scans in that area. So that leads to just increased productivity just within your own practice. Now, some of that comes from, if you take a gen rad who can't read advanced imaging, and now they're reading advanced imaging, well, their RVU productivity goes up because they're able to read these higher productivity studies. Some of it comes from being confident. Something that radiologists are just so amazing at that people forget is to be a general radiologist means you can look at medical images and figure out what's going on. Anyone can interpret a prostate MRI if they have time. The challenge is no one has 2 hours to look at a prostate MRI. You can't, look it up, then look through the literature, then look through some example cases. But all of these radiologists in the US are qualified to do that. These are smart, capable individuals. The question is, how can I look at a prostate MRI when I only look at maybe 2 to 3 a week or 2 to 3 a month and do it in 15 minutes instead of 2 hours? Because when they sit on your list, when there's something that takes you a long time, then they sit on the list and the turn times are long. Then the one guy who reads prostate in the practice isn't allowed to go on vacation because he's the only prostate reader allowed. And so there's a lot of ways you can gain some serious productivity just by unlocking a few additional rads within your practice to read these types of studies that they might otherwise be uncomfortable reading.
I can imagine. Now, is it difficult for radiologists to find the time to do some of these, online fellowships and some of these training courses, or are they able to work it in?
Yeah, so our whole promise is that you can learn to do subspecialty in 5 minutes per day. All of our content is broken up into short, punchy vignettes. Our videos are 2 to 4 minutes long. It's 1 or 2 cases at a time that you can work through on your own time. I'm a big fan of Peloton, and so we try really hard. With Peloton, sometimes I only have time for a 20-minute workout. They've got some content for me. I can jump right in and have a good impact. And it really comes from the habit of learning that leads to, or the habit of exercise that leads to long-term gains. Same thing with us. We try to make it easy. The fellowship certificate programs that we just showed you have launched a bunch of new enhancements to the program to make it easier, faster to engage with our content, as well as provide you data and motivation to show, hey, you're getting smarter, you're getting faster, you're making improvements. So you can work it into your daily life.
And what are some of the benefits to practices to offering these types of online education services?
So number one, all practices care about providing the highest quality patient care that they can. And so I think, in the context of what we've been talking about, it's critically important to understand that we're on the same side of these radiology practices of saying, how do we drive clinical quality? And so some of that comes from in-house training, investing in professional development programs for your people. Second comes from when you have these incidents, as all groups will, data varies whether miss rates are 1% to 5% nationally, but there's something greater than zero, which means every practice in the country has misses. So what are we doing about it? When you have clinical issues, we provide you a path to work with that doctor to provide remediation, to provide upskilling and growth. So number one comes from how do you drive quality and how do you bring data to bear that you're doing so. With quality, then growing, we know that you're going to be able to grow your practice. Is if you can provide the highest quality service at a reasonable price within your group or within your region or within your specialty, you're going to be able to grow, especially in today's climate. Now, still, we can't charge an infinite number. So how do you put a cost on that value that you create? Well, we're actually providing a much higher quality services compared to what's out there otherwise. So traditionally, to gain something similar to what you'd have to do through Medality, you go to the ACR Reston Center, a wonderful program, but you're going to have to take a week off of work. So, okay, that's, what does it cost for a week of radiology time right now? Maybe $20,000 in revenue to your practice to take someone off service. Okay, great. And then you got to pay for their travel, send them away for a week. And so it becomes quite cost prohibitive when compared with in-person training programs. So we provide a 10x better solution at a 10th of the cost.
That's great. Now, Daniel, we've got RSNA coming up in just a few weeks. What can we expect from Medality, and how can people look you up?
We'll be there. We'll have a booth, 3139, where our crew will be demoing all our great products and having lots of fun giveaways. We've also got a great after hours event on Tuesday where folks can come have some drinks and throw some darts and have a good time in a relaxed environment, talking all things radiology education.
And where will that be?
That will be at Flight Club, which is like Top Golf for darts.
Oh, that sounds
in downtown Chicago. So it should be pretty fun. I'm a horrible, passionate darts thrower, so you'll have no trouble beating me, but I might have more fun.
Well, I'm right there with you. We're probably a race to the bottom when it comes to darts. Great. Well, Daniel Arnold, thanks so much for being with us from Medality. And we're looking forward to seeing you at RSNA and at Flight Club. And thanks for being with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Signing off for the Imaging Wire, my name is Brian Casey.